Live here.
Live!
But we don't have to necessarily know what that means.
What's the someday of blank?
I don't
there's
know
a
that we
reason
want to-
this story happens now.
Ladies and gentlemen, the movie writes itself. Ooh. Well,
I'm still streaming. How do I stop streaming? No! It's been a while since I've heard that intro.
it's been a while.
How long has it been? 2 months? 2.5 months?
Longer, I think. I can
Yeah.
look it up, actually. It's been a while.
It's been what some refer to in the industry as a hot minute.
I've never heard that, but okay. No. Anyway, thank you, everybody, for joining us. Again, we're here. Yeah, we wanted to jump on and kind of fill everyone in on kind of why we haven't been here in a while, what we've been up to, and also where we're at today, which is crazy, as most people
We're on
know.
strike.
We're on strike.
We're on strike.
Yeah, but we can still do YouTube videos or live podcasts or whatever this actually
write
is.
a movie. We're not going to be doing that today, though, to be clear. We're not going to jump back into that work today, but we are going to have a little chat and just let everyone know what we've been up to and why the world is the way it is and how it will hopefully change.
Yeah. So I think first thing is, if you don't know the nitty-gritty details of why we're on strike, what the main points are, and what's happening, we're not really the guys to give you all of that information. There are lots of great resources, lots of great podcasts. You can always go on to Script Notes with John August and Craig Mazin. They talk about
that really good podcast that you've recommended. I haven't listened to it yet, which is actually made by Deadline.
Yes,
Steve Ray and Todd Garner. Todd Garner runs
Talk, I believe, is what.
Yes. And they're doing, I think, an episode a week throughout the strike.
It's fantastic. And I like the first episode was great. I'm only a little bit into the newest episode, but it's really great. Right. And actually, I'd like to just publicly thank Billy Ray and Todd Garner for doing that, because I think it's really, really educational in many ways and brings and sheds light on a lot of issues.
Before we do talk about what we've been up to for the last couple of months, we were trying to figure out when our last episode was. It was maybe February, maybe early March. I can't really.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to know the exact,
I want facts. Facts speak louder than opinions, Ben.
I can tell you that it was February 24th.
There you go. So it has been a minute.
It has been a while.
So, yes, it has. So the reason that we had to stop podcasting and stop working on our script was we actually got really busy, which is great. Yeah. Super happy to get busy. We booked a little job. We booked a rewrite for a film, which we were able to just get in just before the strike happened. We managed to get that in and we managed to get our polish in just before it happened.
We also had a TV pilot that we actually have now a deal with Sony Television. Okay. That is an if-come deal, and I think that's a whole other bigger conversation. But basically, really quickly, what that means is we still need a distributor. Sony's made a deal with us. It's based on a book, fantastic book that that one day we'll tell you about. Yeah. And we have great producers that we love. And so we had to go into kind of starting to try and package that to get that ready to take out. Of course, we didn't take it out before the strike. So now we don't know when that will go out. Yeah. And then we had a couple of really great opportunities to spec some new things with some producers that we love to work with. So all that stuff kind of just became a lot. And as we've discovered, there's only so many creative worlds we can live in at one time before they start to get jumbled and crazy.
It was funny, wasn't it? And I'm sure we've talked about this in the past. It's like, how many can we handle, and how many plates are there?
Yeah.
Pre-strike. I think there were like 8 or 9 different plates.
Yeah.
various stages of development. So anyway, we
haven't forgotten about this project.
We haven't forgotten. We've often said we really want to get back, A, to that script, but also B, to be communicating with everybody out there in the world.
And now that we're on strike and we can't pitch and we can't sell and we can't do any more steps on our other jobs, maybe we'll be able to do this podcast.
Totally. But of course, we are currently striking.
Yes.
So unless you've been living under a rock in the screenwriting community, you will know that a couple of weeks ago, the talks between the Writers Guild of America and what's called the AMPTP, which is the Association of Motion Picture and Television Producers. It's the company that represents all the studios and essentially all of the WGA signatories, companies that sign the WGA, agree to the WGA or the agreement. If you want to be a producer that works with a WGA writer, a Writers Guild of America writer, you have to become a signatory. So this company represents really the big studios essentially, but then
everyone else falls in line.
And then everyone else falls in line behind them. But they had been talking, I think, for about 5 or 6 weeks, and those talks eventually broke down in the day before the contract was due to expire. As Ben said earlier, there are numerous resources out there to find out what those things are. The most interesting, though, for me personally, was the list of demands and what the studio said demands.
It was pretty fucked up.
It was pretty fucked up. And honestly, when I read that, I got really angry.
Yeah.
Because that was the moment I went, wow, because in numerous times, again, look for these online, you can find them. It was, no, we don't agree to that, and we're not even going to come back with a counter.
No counter
whatsoever.
Yeah.
And there are several that you go, oh, okay, that's really interesting. But one of the ones that we've been talking quite a lot about, I think people in the world have been talking a lot about, and I think you said something really interesting this morning, which was about, we didn't even think it was that big until we saw what the studio said to our demand,
right,
which was about the aspect of AI.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting is from the very beginning, we knew going into these negotiations that, broadly speaking, this was an existential crossroads for writers and for the entertainment industry. And the main thing that we went into this really believing was the streaming model and how making a living as a writer specifically had become more and more difficult, to the point where the guild and the majority of writers really did feel like the career of being a writer was on the line.
Yeah.
And part of that has been, since those early moments where the guild told us as the members what their pattern of demands were, what they were going to go in for, part of that was AI and how we can have some form of, whether it's jurisdiction or whether it's just guarantees or rules, something governing the use of AI. What was really interesting, though, is when they went in and they went to place that potential thing on the table, what we've been told since by the negotiating committee was that their response essentially was, absolutely not. We're not going to discuss it because we're not going to talk about a technology we intend to potentially use in the future.
Yeah. And I think that was interesting. Now, I think the kind of public perception, and I belong to several groups where I just anonymously lurk and watch and see what people are talking about, particularly on Facebook. And people have been saying, oh, the writers are just worried that they're going to be replaced by AI. And actually, I don't think that's where I'm not worried about that at the moment. Now, could that happen in the future? Perhaps. But really what I get concerned about is the production of literary material using AI. What do we mean by literary material? Well, literally anything that's written down. So if a studio, for example, goes into one of these AI content producing engines and says, make me a story about, a warrior nun.
Right.
You know, and it writes a short story, writes even a synopsis or a treatment. That then becomes literary material. They can then go and go, hey, agents, get me a writer. We want to turn this into a movie. Well, at that point, that is not a writer-generated piece of property.
Yeah.
It is actually intellectual property, IP, that exists to, in this particular case, the studio. And that affects so much, and primarily it affects two things. It affects our credit, potentially, from an arbitration, which then immediately affects our pay.
Right.
Direct link between those two things.
Yeah. And our rights. There are things called separated rights.
Completely.
That involve all kinds of ways in which the companies are either able to or not able to use our personal intellectual property. It also gives us monetary, payments for things like sequels, things like merchandising. Those things only come to you if it's an original idea. You don't have separated rights really on rewrites. And basically, or adaptations even. And so what that becomes is every single piece of work potentially becomes an adaptation or a rewrite. And you as a writer all of a sudden become marginalized to just a hired gun. Always. And I think that, will original ideas still come from writers? Yes, they will. And will studios still want to buy those original ideas? Yes, they will. But that being said, a lot of money is involved in that.
If they can find a way to produce content that people will watch and pay less for it, they will. Because they are corporations, and that is what they are always seeking to do. It's
that's what
what any investor is trying to do. Like
dollars. It's about the bottom line. It's capitalism. And I think that Billy Ray says it really good in their podcast. Like, he's a capitalist through and through. I as well feel like I am a capitalist.
I do too.
I do believe that people should do what they have to do and do what they have to do to make the most money that they can. And at the same time, what we're talking about really is the beginning of essentially the extinction of what a writing career was and a completely new paradigm of what a writer would be in the future. We talked about, like, currently AI really can't write a script. It's not good in any way, shape, or form.
And we've played around with it. We actually talked about it.
Yeah.
When it was first kind of out there. And you play around with it, you go, write me a scene where, and it's crap. It's just horrible. Crap. But is it a jumping off point? Maybe, sure.
And that's the thing. If a script is written first, it can be as bad as as anything. I mean, it literally can be like a piece of garbage, but if it's a script of form of any kind, it becomes the first draft of that project.
Completely right.
And what if
used to pay the writer?
And what if you could go in to a studio and say, I've got this idea for a movie. I'll use your example about a warrior nun.
Sure, right.
And the Warrior Nun movie. I mean, it's, there's a Warrior Nun TV show, which I actually liked the first season of. So we're not taking that. We're not talking about that specifically. But imagine you go in and you say, I want to do this. It's really cool. Well, there's lots of things that could happen. One, you could leave that room and the executive that you were just talking to could, in theory, just say, write me a treatment about a movie about a warrior nun into AI. And all of a sudden, your idea that you just talked about in the room that wasn't written down, and so there is no copyrightable claim to that idea, now becomes a studio's idea. I mean, that's like a really hard, awful, evil version. And I don't know that necessarily would be the way. I think there'd be a lot of litigation over things like that. And there has been in the past. Stealing people's ideas. It does happen. It has happened. It will continue to happen.
Particularly, and you see Cole Haddon talk about this, if it is a public domain, he already, you know, write me a movie where, you know, Dracula is the hero of the story in Bram Stoker's Dracula. You know, and you go, oh, what? You know, he went in and pitched an idea, and they said, we don't want to hire you for this idea. We want to hire someone else, but we'll give you story credit.
Right. Well, and that's what I was just going to say. So imagine now that the second stage of that is, okay, maybe they don't steal your idea completely, but they say, write us we'll pay you for a treatment, which for any writer is going to be significantly less than a draft.
Yeah.
So they pay you for a treatment. Then they take that treatment, and
they buy that treatment off you.
Buy that treatment.
And that's the deal that you've made.
And that's it.
Yeah.
And then they put that treatment into the AI, and we say, take this and write me a draft.
Right.
Now, your first draft of that screenplay is written by AI.
Well, here's the thing, and this is one of the things that we were talking about earlier. Currently enshrined in the NBA, and it's why the AMPTP said this isn't an issue anyway, is that a script currently must be written by a person. But again, there comes a point where that becomes, does that get litigated?
What does that mean?
Yeah.
If I wrote a paragraph into an AI text bot or on a Word document that then I put into the AI, well, am I not a human that then wrote something that then the AI simply expanded upon?
Yeah, sure.
It would all have to go through the court system, which would take an enormous amount of time and money.
Yeah. I'm more worried about the initial version of it, which is them coming up and generating IP essentially, and then finding a way for it to be less. Because the WGA does state a script can only be written by a person.
I know, but you would hear from a lot of guild people, and you know, when you eventually listen to the Billy Ray podcast, that's not something he talks about.
Sure.
And I think there is a concern, a general concern that while it may state that, it's pretty easy to get around that. There's a lot of loopholes around that statement.
Yeah.
And so, okay, the final script had a person touch it.
Totally. That's
all they need.
Yeah, sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, one of the things, so I've been on the picket line quite a bit since this all started. I'm in LA, so I'm able to do that. Jake has been very supportive from where he is online and everything else.
Yeah.
And so I've been talking to people on the line, and I think that one of the concerns in television is the literal, like, extinction is not necessarily the word that I would use, but the erasing of a writer's room. So currently, most writers, in fact, the majority of the guild, are television writers who work in writers' rooms. That's been the tradition since the early days of television. It's the way people earn a living. It's a good way to have a middle-class lifestyle and be able to support your family in a city like Los Angeles, which is insanely expensive. But what people are talking about, and I think it has a lot of merit, is let's say you have a show that's had a great first season. Maybe you even had a writer's room for that season, because I think that we're not quite to the point with AI where it can do everything for us yet. We're not there yet.
We're not.
But right now, you could take, let's say you've got 12 scripts that really encapsulate what this show is. And let's say it's a procedural, like a Law and Order or something like that. And you had this room potentially, and then you go, we want a second season. You're all fired, writers who were in this room. We're going to take what we already have, we're going to feed it into the AI, and we're going to say, give us 12 new scripts using this in this format with these characters in new, essentially procedural ways.
Yeah.
And then we have one writer, the showrunner, who comes in and rewrites all of the AI stuff.
Yeah, totally.
And that's it.
And that's
all
it.
I need.
And you know, in a writer's room for various shows, there are examples where the showrunner does not give credit to people in his or her writer's room and just goes, I rewrote all of these scripts.
Right.
And at
least there were writers there helping and writing those first drafts and outlines.
Aaron Sorkin on The West Wing would often give story credit to the people who helped break the story, but he would get teleplay guy.
Right.
Right. Imagine that all those scripts and ideas were then just things generated by AI, and Aaron Sorkin.
And I think the first place you'll start to see it really is in procedural television, which is a lot. I mean, you're talking about the network shows that have larger rooms that go for 22 episodes. Some of the only shows that actually allow people to still earn a really good living would be the first ones whereby you could see those basic structural elements get just spit out, and then you only need maybe one or two writers to like go through and tweak and adjust. And is it great television? No. But is it something someone would watch? Another episode of whatever show?
And sit through 20 minutes, 18 minutes of commercials while it's on. Yeah.
Right. And I think that, there's lots of other examples about how this technology can really start to dwindle the amount of, or whittle down the amount of writers needed to complete the task. It's not that the writer is gone completely.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. In the same way as, like, for example, the idea that there are autonomous cars, and while they're autonomous cars, everyone says it's a good idea to have someone behind the wheel just in case something goes wrong.
Yes.
I'm sure we'll start to see in the next 10 or 20 years, the idea of, we already do to a certain degree, don't we, with aircraft. There's an autopilot on an aircraft that's looking after and adjusting. It's not the pilot going, oh, hang on a minute, we're 2 degrees off because of the wind. It's the autopilot that's doing that. But you've got to have 2 guys in the cockpit to make sure it doesn't. There's always going to be a human presence. It's just necessary. But
there's a lot of jobs, I think, that already outside of the entertainment industry are being, what's that?
In manufacturing.
But also even in like things like finance, like if you go online, like the number of robo investors that are there that is really like taking the place of a traditional broker. And there's I think we are truly on the kind of the front lines of going, if you want to use this technology as a tool, okay, but we're not going to let humans be completely erased from the process.
Right.
And that we do add value. We make it better. And we don't want AI controlling the future of the human workforce. I mean, I was talking to someone on the line the other day who basically said, like, if we allow AI to continue to grow at the pace that it's growing, and if we allow it to replace workers down to the bare minimum of what is required to have a human watching or focusing on what's going on, then within a few years, we're going to be in a massive economic, global economic situation whereby, billions of people are going to be affected because it all trickles into all industries.
It does. And it's interesting because I've seen several times representatives of the WGA, particularly people like Adam Conover, who I've really liked seeing all of his videos and talks. He's excellent. But just kind of saying this isn't just about,
right.
I mean, obviously for us, we're arguing for and fighting for our rights as writers. But in the public sphere, we're arguing for all workers to stand up and fight against corporate control and manipulation. A corporation is not a person. I just read a really fantastic thread by Ben Edlund on Twitter. I might just read it really quickly because it's great. It's not crazy long. It's like 4 tweets long. A corporation is not a person. It is not a human being. even if our legal system recognizes it as such. It is a profit-seeking collective, an inhuman conglomerate which eats numbers and shits misery. We, the members of the WGA, are the human beings in this conflict. We are the individuals with homes, families, and livelihoods, defending the dignity and stability of our beloved profession against corporate greed and misled shareholders' expectations of unlimited growth. The media in which we work form a robust and vital industry that guarantees profit, but our industry can't be expected to offset the losses of mega corporations which were incurred by their failed ventures elsewhere. We line up today on just one of many emerging fronts in the battle between humanity and the inhuman forces of corporate avarice, monopoly, and exploitation. They will not stop us. They are furiously refining the means of your ultimate exploitation as well. All actual humans will fight this same battle.
Yeah. I mean, we really are in this age of science fiction becoming reality.
Yep.
And this has always happened throughout history, whereby people dream, science fiction writers have dreamed up things that then become real.
Totally.
I mean, we see it in everything that we use. But we're now at the point where people and the value of a person is being diminished to the point whereby it's like, well, as a corporation, I can make more money. I can show more earnings. I can be rewarded on Wall Street if I just cut all these jobs and replace them with a computer.
Totally.
And
you said something interesting earlier as well, which I really liked, which was how would the corporate, the creative executive at a studio suddenly feel if they weren't necessary anymore?
Yeah.
Their job is to take a project and shepherd it through the development so that it becomes something that the studio would want to make. Well, what if that was just a computer? What if a creative executive is no longer needed?
Yeah.
And whoever at Sony, you have the 4 or 5 big producers on the lot at Sony who work for the executives at Sony who just go, great, I've got this script. Secretary, put this through the program and give me and have it spew out
feedback. Give me feedback
based on our parameters of what we as a studio want. This doesn't just affect writers. This affects everyone.
And I heard, someone said this, I think it was again the Billy on his podcast, but those people who are our creative executives, they're our partners. That's not who we're striking against.
Of course.
The producers that we work with, they're our partners. They're not. These are the creative people who have passion about making movies and TV. We love what we do. We want to see these things happen. We've worked with wonderful executives but they're not the corporate greed. I mean, heck, they're the ones getting laid off as a result of a lot of this.
Totally. Absolutely right.
It's the people who are at the very top, who are the 1%ers, who are the people going, where can we cut? How can we fix this? How can we put out more content for cheaper? How can we do all of this? And they don't really care about the creative process.
Right.
They care about how many eyeballs they have and how many dollars they make.
Absolutely right.
And that's who we're striking against, because they have no problem coming in and wiping out all of our careers, including the executives. And so in many ways, like, we are fighting for them too.
Yeah,
we really are.
I agree. I absolutely agree. And I really like to mention it's like we're about all of humanity fighting against this concept of just corporate greed, because a corporation is not a person. It's not a person. Anyway,
it's interesting because I think that the directors have started their negotiations.
They have,
as of this last Wednesday, and their contract and the actors, their contracts are up at the end of June, right? June 30th.
Right.
And I'm very interested to see what happens, because I hope that the directors and the actors, and I've talked to many of them on the line who definitely do agree with the threat that this is posing to their careers. I'm not necessarily sure that the leadership of their guilds see quite how existential it is for them as well as us. But I hope they go online and see how easy it is to take their likenesses, to take their skills, to take their talent, to take their ability to frame a shot, to take their ability to do a voiceover, and have that replaced by
AI. Disney recently recorded James Earl Jones's voice in the same way as Apple records Siri or Alexa by Amazon. They took this person's voice, in this particular case, James Earl Jones, so that should and when James Earl Jones passes away, they will be able to use his voice in any future depictions of Darth Vader. And they've got that all so that they can do it as and when
they can. They can do it.
Now, in that particular case, James Earl Jones undoubtedly is licensing that. You may license my voice
now,
perpetuity.
Right.
James Earl Jones got paid.
Yes.
But that comes to a point when you go, wow, hang on a minute, that's crazy, because when James Earl Jones dies, he could still be in movies. We're seeing deep fakes become more and more and more realistic, to the point where you go, I saw one of Joe Biden saying some pretty gross and horrible stuff.
Right.
I could not tell that it was not Joe Biden. It looked exactly like him, and his face and his voice, absolutely perfect.
Do you remember the movie with Al Pacino that was about him and a fake actress? It was an AI actress that was not real. No. It came out, God, I'll have to look it up. Someone watching the show is going to know it. Please leave it in the comments. But it was really interesting because somehow he had created this virtual actress who became a movie star. And she wasn't real, but she became a global movie star, but she has no physical presence. So they could just put her into movies. And you start to go, well, think about what Midjourney does, right? Midjourney is able to take all of this amazing art that was created by all of these amazing artists, take all of that data, and then create new art utilizing all of other people's work. Well, what if Midjourney could take all the Chris's, you take the Chris's, right? It's Chris Pratt, Chris Evans, Chris Pine, and I'm sure there's another one.
Hemsworth,
right? Hemsworth, Chris Hemsworth. They take all the data from those guys and they create a new Chris.
And make a super Chris.
But I joke, and yet that's not possible. There's no reason they can't create.
I bet you if I opened up Midjourney right now, I would be able to create a super Chris.
Right. Oh, Simone. Oscar left it in the
Thanks,
thing.
Oscar. Yeah, I saw that.
It was actually a really interesting movie that, again, science fiction that is now becoming reality.
Yeah.
I watched those really funny fake Wes Anderson trailers.
Totally.
Have you seen them?
Yeah.
Star Wars one and a Lord of the Rings one.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Almost entirely created by AI.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'll tell you, if Wes Anderson doesn't think that they can literally recreate his style as a director, he needs to watch those trailers.
Absolutely right. Yeah.
And so I think, there's a big picture thing that's going to happen whereby, whether it's music, whether it's painting, whether it's acting, whether it's writing or directing, our style, our likeness, what is able to be trademarked or copywritten, those things have to somehow belong to us.
Totally.
Right. Our style as writers, what would be considered a Ben and Jake movie.
Yeah.
If an AI took that style and wrote a new movie and it read and felt like a movie that we would have written, there needs to be a way for us to know that happened and for us to then be compensated for that being done. If Midjourney creates a super Chris, all of those Chris's should be paid for the use of their likenesses.
Totally.
Did you make one?
I'm just doing it right now.
Okay. So But this is how it affects everyone, especially in Hollywood, but all art forms. So there was a song that came out, and I can't remember the artists that they used, but there was a song that was released that was a mashup of two big pop stars. Someone watching this will be able to tell me what that is as well. And you couldn't tell that it was AI, but it was.
Yeah, sure. Totally.
They used their voices, and they created a whole new song that wasn't them.
Right.
And so you go, at what point, who owns that?
Totally.
Who owns that?
Who owns that?
And this is a whole other side of, there's the side of AI that replaces us because it's able to do a lot of the jobs that we currently do. And then there's the side of AI that literally replaces us by using what we have contributed to the world.
Right.
And literally replaces us.
Sure.
And that's like, I feel like actually actors and musicians have far more at stake when it comes to that first. Totally. Because without a good script, you can't have a fake actor.
Right.
Yes, it is. Alice, thank you. It was the Drake and the Weeknd fake song.
Totally right. Yeah, absolutely.
And from what I've been told, and I haven't heard it, from what I've been told, it's creepy and eerie that you can't tell that it's not actually them singing.
I mean, that's wild. That is so wild. But this, and again, what you say is true. Who will own that? It will just be one guy we can pay, and that the corporations then will reap all of the benefits of that. And that one guy will probably be making bank. They pay him really well, so he doesn't fight against it.
And at what point, you brought up a really great point as well this morning, which is that writers, and this is true for most, I would say, musicians and artists as well, our work is almost always based on our experiences in the world, and that those, our scripts, our stories, our music, we're influenced by other artists. And now, there was just a big copyright infringement case that
Ed Sheeran
won.
Yep. And he won.
But had Ed Sheeran not been Ed Sheeran and an AI had created that song,
totally.
What is that?
I know. Absolutely.
And how do we, as a society and as artists, find a way to diminish the incentive for these companies to do that?
Right.
If we can make it more costly for them, if they have to pay all of those Chris's instead of just one, it's better for them because all they care about is dollars. Sure. You have to make it more expensive for them to use AI than to use a person.
Totally.
And then they won't. Right.
Yeah.
Did you send me something?
I haven't sent it to you. I'm trying to share my screen at the moment. It's not letting me do it, but I
don't have anything that has a
it says I have share screen and I need to I want to do window preview share.
Yeah.
In system preferences. It's going to the lock bottom left hand corner. Select Google Chrome. Hang on, let me just do this really quickly because
Are you in Chrome? Because I think it only works in Chrome. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that this issue, and it's interesting because we were saying this earlier. It's like this was always an existential crisis for writers. It always was. This negotiation was going to be a hard one.
Yeah.
From last summer when people started talking about it, from 2 years ago, this was going to be the conversation when we went in 2020 about streaming, about residuals, about what writers deserve for their contributions to the product that people consume. That was always a huge issue.
Of course.
Today, on May 12th of 2023, the bigger issue that has really engulfed, I think, this whole conversation is what is the future of
this
all professions?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
What is the future for the Teamster whose truck becomes automated? What is the future of the camera operator who now has a smart camera that can do everything that
totally right? Who can compose a shot?
Who can compose a shot no matter what?
Yeah.
What is the future for the actor whose likeness gets licensed for a small, tiny fee? Oh my gosh!
I did it old school and printed it out. This is a combination created by Midjourney live. Of Chris Evans, Chris Pratt, Chris Hemsworth, and Chris Pine all in one.
Right.
And what a man he is.
And what a man he is.
I'm not, but I would.
Right. So that, I mean, look, there's an example of where we are today. And something else a lot of people have brought up, and I know this to be true from conversations that I've had. We only know the surface.
That's right.
Where Apple, Google, Amazon, where all of these people are, one of our viewers, the Super Chris, it's so true. But where these people are, where these corporations are in terms of how advanced their AI tech is, so much further along than what
and again,
seen.
like this is like Midjourney came out to the public facing beta of it came out 6 months ago, 7 months ago.
Yeah.
At the time, it couldn't do human hands. It would do weird things. It would have like 7 or 8 fingers. Like it didn't understand. Now it can do human hands. There's a new version of it. It can do human hands. It can do photorealistic stuff. You go, wow, I cannot believe. I was playing around with it the other day, created an image for my vision board. Yeah. I did not know that this was not a real picture of a real person. I'm like, that's crazy. That is so crazy.
It is. And I think that, look, this strike, from everyone that I've talked to who was here during the 2007 strike, which was our last big strike, that I technically was in Los Angeles, but I was working in restaurants and had no idea.
I had just arrived. I just arrived in LA trying to make it as an actor, and then everything shut down.
I remember it going on because it actually trickled down to like less business for us, or in some cases more business for people needing more alcohol. But for the most part, it was less business of people coming in and having the business lunches that used to support certain aspects of the restaurant community. But from everyone I've heard who talked about that strike, people were mad at writers in a very visceral way for shutting down the industry and for causing in their minds all of the pain that people in Los Angeles especially were feeling. And they were not supportive, and the writers stuck together and they did it anyways. And ultimately it was an incredibly important strike that gave us what is essentially referred to as jurisdiction over the internet, which allowed us to negotiate deals with streamers.
And here's the thing. What I always remember, and we talked about this a lot at various meetings. All the time the writers were going, the internet is going to be a really big thing moving forward. We want jurisdiction about it. The AMPTP were like, it's not going to be a thing. Don't worry about it. Just take this little bad deal. And we were like, no, the internet is going to be a thing. This is going to be the new thing. We want jurisdiction about it. Eventually we won. The day the 2007 writers' strike ended, they launched Hulu. One of the very first dedicated streaming services.
Wow.
Like the day after. And they knew. They
knew the whole time.
The whole fucking time. The AMPTP are liars. They represent corporate greed. Fuck those motherfuckers.
Yeah, and they are not, again, I want to reiterate, they are not the ones that we work with on a daily basis.
No.
Those people are great people that really believe in the creative process.
Totally.
They're not even their bosses.
Totally. The people that we've connected with at studios are supportive of us.
Yeah.
Although they cannot publicly be because we're struggling against the companies that they work for.
Yeah. They can't, but they are. And they know that what we're fighting for now, more than ever, is existential. It is fighting against the extinction of the professions in our career, in our business, on multiple levels. Absolutely. And that we're the first to go with that. Hopefully we won't be the last. Hopefully every other union in Hollywood sees the same things that we do.
Yeah.
And I think they will. I was at the Shrine Auditorium. We had a right after the strike, the writers held a big meeting. And
I wish I could have been there.
Biggest meeting. I wish you were there too. It was the biggest meeting I've ever attended. I think it's the biggest meeting in like WGA history. It was like, I think I've read 2,000 writers attended. I think John August said on his podcast it was close to 3,000 writers in attendance.
Amazing.
It was insane. And we were there, and representatives from every single Hollywood union were there to speak to us and tell us about their solidarity and explain to us why they understood where we were coming from, agreed that we all have a stake in this and we're going to stand by us. And you know what? So far, they've all lived up to that.
Totally right. I think what I've loved seeing videos of the Teamsters not crossing picket lines. So the Teamsters are the drivers of the trucks that deliver anything that a production needs, camera equipment, pieces of set, costumes, whatever, anything that needs to come in is driven by a Teamster. And they have refused to cross picket lines. And a picket line is 2 or more people holding signs.
Right.
And and you've seen these trucks trying to get into productions and turn around.
Yeah.
We shut down last week Daredevil. They were filming it at, I think it's Silvertree Studios in LA. We shut it down. The Teamsters tried to arrive at lunchtime. They all went home because they couldn't. Which
is amazing. And shout out to all the writers and other people supporting us who show up at 5 a.m.
Totally.
And 6 a.m.
Also, if you are in LA, go and join a picket line.
Yeah, you don't have to be in the guild yet.
You don't have to be a Writers Guild member. Do it for a day.
I've been walking with SAG members. I've been walking with writers who know that one day they want to be in the WGA. There's
absolutely
who've been there multiple times. I mean, I see the same people coming out and supporting us who aren't actually in the guild. Yeah. And I think it's so amazing. I think the public sentiment is there. I think people understand this is not just about us making more money. And yes, do we want to make more money for the contributions that we put?
Of course we do.
Of course. But we realized, and we've known it, but we really realized it in the negotiations that they're planning on really fucking us.
They're planning on, and here's the thing. It's not like we are at the place where we were at over the last 5 to 10 years, whatever. Median writer pay has been going down.
Yes.
It's not that we're going, hey, we're here and we want to be here. What we're saying with is this downward trend cannot continue. This needs to be continually being an upward trend in the same way as all the profits of all of these companies continues to generally be an upward trend. Yeah. You might see a quarter where Disney loses money, where they've lost shareholders, whatever. Subscribers.
Right.
That does happen. It happens in any business. Of course it does. It's not just about what's going on in their entertainment business, though. Disney's a mega corporation.
There was a guy on Twitter trying to say that, the companies actually aren't, their income hasn't been going up or the profits haven't been going up. I kind of was trying to get into it, and then I just stopped because I was like, I'm not going to get into it.
Short. Yeah.
What's that?
I've just realized that life is too short to get into.
Right. I'm not going to get into an online battle with someone that I don't even know. Yeah. But the reality is, if you look back at the quarterly earning reports for the last 5 years, and you see that these companies are showing profits, they are making money, and have their profits grown? Maybe not as much as they want. Maybe their profits have been stagnant, and maybe their share prices have gone down as a result, but they're still making profit.
But here's the thing. These corporations aren't just one thing. When you talk about Disney, you're not just talking about Disney's entertainment division. You're talking about cruise lines. You're talking about theme parks. You're talking about sports. And all the other things that Disney does and has monopoly over, which are hundreds of things.
Right.
It's not just right. It's like that's what Ed was talking about on Twitter. It's like because you're losing money elsewhere on a venture isn't our thing. You know,
right. I mean, and they would claim, and many of them have said that they're losing money on their streaming ventures. Okay,
sure.
Well, nobody told you to get into streaming in the first place.
Absolutely.
Nobody told you to stop selling ads.
No one told you to start releasing less movies in the theaters.
Right.
No one told you to do that. We don't want that.
Go back to it.
We just got our first residual check for The Princess. And let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, it fucking sucked.
Yeah.
It sucked huge donkey in hell. It did. It was like we could not believe the pitiful amount of money that we were getting.
For an entire year of them playing our movie worldwide. We don't
know how many people watched it because Disney doesn't release that information.
They're not transparent.
Because they're not transparent.
And we love that.
Transparency. What did the AMPTP said? No.
Right. I mean, we're off the AI subject at the moment, but this is important as well. And I think it is, you know, one of the things that we want, and I think that everyone should want, the actors should want this, the directors should want this, is more transparency. You know, we said to them, one of the things we asked for was a bump for movies and shows that are highly viewed.
Yes.
A reward for success.
Totally. The movie you wrote.
That is not unreasonable. And what was their answer?
No.
We're not even going to discuss it. No counter.
No. So that's the kind of shit we're dealing with.
Yeah.
Is we're dealing with people going, no, we don't want to pay you in success. We want to be rewarded in success, but we don't want to share that.
We don't want to pay you for what you do today, and we're going to fire you tomorrow and replace you with a robot. Right. That's where we're at. It's pretty freaking doom and gloom stuff here.
Mibwab. So left us a comment on YouTube, said, just wanted to say hi and that I love your podcast. Always listen to it on Spotify as the first time for live doesn't work well for my schedule. Keep up the great work, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's
yes.
And Mibwab.
You know, I realized that like we just kind of like threw this on today because we were like, we should really talk about this. And the reality is, like, most of you will hopefully be watching or listening after our live show, as always has been. Yes. We love all the live participation, but we also love the post-live.
We do. Well. So we will get back to working on our script Hellfire, which we were having so much fun with. We are wrapping up a spec of ours over the next couple of weeks, which has been super fun. Then Ben's going off to Disney World. And then after that, probably will...
Don't tell anyone. I'm trying to not put money into Disney's pocket. It's not writing working. I've got a 6-year-old. What am I going to do?
I mean, here's the thing. I put money into Disney's pocket. I'm putting money into Disney's pocket tonight. I'm going to go and see Guardians of the Galaxy 3.
I am tonight as well.
Oh, that's funny, isn't it? We'll have something to talk about on Monday.
I know. We're going tonight as well. You know, this is the problem is like, we all love this shit. That's why we do it. Like, we don't want to be striking. This is not our choice. Right?
Like, our show that we're about to take out is at the fucking 5-yard line. We're nearly
I have something
there.
to tell you about that when we get offline. That's not great. But but anyway, you know, something that's going to be interesting, and I'll just leave this episode with a little like a cliffhanger, like we would for one of our shows.
What is it?
We've been writing a spec, and that spec kind of crosses into and borders up against our movie that we've been outlining on this podcast. And I'm going to bring up...
It lives in I'd say it's in a space adjacent to it.
Adjacent enough that I'm going to bring up next time we actually work on that there might be some changes that we need to make.
There you go. There you go.
And that's all I'm going to say about that.
Sounds good. All right, guys. Thank you so much, everyone who watched this live. Michael Russ, good to see you too. Oscar, Alice, and Nibwab. We really appreciate your engagement. If you're watching this after the fact, please leave us a comment. What are your opinions on AI? How do you think it's going to affect not only writing, but all aspects? Do you think the Writers Guild are crazy and that we shouldn't be fighting for AI? We want to hear your opinions. Let's get a conversation going. It's really important that we're engaging in dialogue about this. But if you haven't watched any of the episodes of the show, we do a little section all the time where we talk about stuff that's going on in business, in the business of Hollywood, or things that we've experienced in our career.
It's a good time for us to have interviews of our writer.
Right, it really is. Well. Let's get a few more of those going.
Let's do that.
And get those on. But anyway, thank you so much. We appreciate you all.
Have a great weekend, everyone.
Take care.
We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.